Hi all, it's PJ with Montevilla Sewing Centers. This video section is on specialty products. Most of the following products are produced by stabilizer companies, but they really aren't stabilizers. The link to the stabilizer cheat sheet is in the video description below. Specialty products include toppers, backers, stiffeners, webs, fleece, and applique products. The first of this is what I would consider a fabric stiffener, and this is the R&K Stitch and Shape, and you can see it's stiff. It's single-sided fusible, so you could fuse your fabric to one side and then stitch through it. It's washable, and it will form. So if you steam this and then like drape it over a bowl or something, you could actually form this. And you can stitch through it, no problem at all. The comparable OESD product is this, which is Fiberform. And they're about the same thickness. The Fiberform is not quite as stiff, but they will basically both do the same things. So that's Stitch and Shape or Fiberform. The next specialty item is the Floriani Heat and Stay Fusible Fleece. This is in fact fusible as it says, and this is intended to be a permanent fusible. You probably can't see this on the camera, but I fused this on here and then tried to pull it off and half of it stayed stuck. So the fusing is really quite good. This is the perfect type of item for like a wall hanging or a placemat, something of that nature. It is pretty dense, and I'm going to say this is probably a polyester. It's much denser than, say, a regular quilt batting. So that is the Fusible Fleece. The Fusion Fleece, which is the OESD product, this is the Fusion Fleece, and it's very, very lightweight. It's much lighter weight than the Heat and Stay Fusible Fleece. This is, I'm going to say, maybe only a millimeter or so thick, but it will add a little bit of extra body, and it is, again, fusible. This is also a very nice product, the OESD. The next product is Dreamweave Fusible and Gentle Touch Backing. They're almost identical, and one of my favorite uses for this is on the back side of embroidery. Here I've got a little poinsettia design, and there is metallic thread in here. And the metallic thread on the back side can be a little bit scratchy, and even depending on what kind of bobbin thread you're using, just your bobbin thread on the back side can be a little bit scratchy. So what I've done here is I have just fused, and again, this is not a stabilizer, and so on this, the fusing is permanent. So on the Dreamweave Fusible and also the Gentle Touch Backing, same thing. I have just fused this completely over the embroidery, and you can see, get this opened up a little bit more. I have left a border around the embroidery to make sure that that stays well fused. But now the back side of this is really nice and soft. I have a lot of customers that just do this on the back side of all of their embroideries. Here is the Dreamweave Fusible once again, and this is really what it's intended for. This is a piece of Lycra fabric. So if you were to try to embroider on this, you would have kind of a mess because it's all stretchy. So using the Dreamweave Fusible or the Gentle Touch Backing first, because the Fusible actually has some give to it, but it will kind of maintain some of the stretch in here. So you can see here, this is actually embroidered out really nicely. And this has a topping on it as well because this is knit, so the stitches would fall in. But the embroidery is all nice and flat, which is exactly what you would want. And using the Gentle Touch or the Dreamweave first, and that's going to stay put, and then doing your embroidery. There is also Dreamweave Ultra, which is designed specifically for woven. So if you needed a backing, a permanent backing, say for a quilt block, the Dreamweave Ultra is the perfect thing to use. This is the template tearaway or the stable stick template sheets. These come in 8.5 by 11. They're designed to go through your inkjet printer. Couple things to note: when you're printing, you want to always make sure that you're at 100% scale and use an inkjet printer so that you know that it is exactly at 100% scale. A lot of times laser printers, even though they say they're at 100% scale, they may not be. Also, most laser printers use heat, which could affect the template tearaway. How this works: you run it through your printer, and there's a protective sheet that you peel off, and then this part is tacky. So why this is so handy, say you have your garment that you want to put your template on so that you know where to stitch. You would peel this away from the protective paper, and then you can place this, because it's tacky on the back side, you can then place this on your garment exactly where it needs to be. Then you can go try your garment on and not have to worry about getting poked by pins. And once you actually have that garment on, you can stand in front of your mirror, and then you can easily reposition this to wherever it needs to be. And because it's sticky, it'll stick on there. You can carefully take off the garment and then position your embroidery. Hoop that up and position your embroidery. Before you start stitching, after you have your placement done, you would want to remove this. It is not a tearaway stabilizer. So just know that. You need to remove this before you do your stitching. But that's the template tearaway or the stable stick template sheet. The heat and gone or the heat to go toppings, which is what this is. And again, it's kind of a plasticky substance. There are little, one side is completely smooth and one side has little bumps. The bump side goes to your fabric. Generally what happens here is you would stitch your design, just tear away all the bits that you can tear away. And if there's any little parts that we're not able to tear away, if you just tap it with a medium iron, it basically just dissipates. So whatever you're using this on needs to be able to hold up to a medium iron, but it's kind of like magic. It just goes away. This is a really, really good topping to use on a towel, because the part that's underneath the stitches will not go away and it will stay put, which will help keep the loops of the towel down. As a general rule, when you're doing towels, you would want to use a design that has a double run underlay. If you don't digitize, you really don't have any way to do that. And most of the letters that come built into the machines barely have an underlay at all. So this, the heat and gone or the heat to go topping, is really a perfect solution for using on towels. It will do two things. It will keep the loops underneath your top stitching, and it will keep your top stitching above the loops of the towel. And it, underneath the embroidery, it will stay put even after it's laundered, which is exactly what you would want. So the next item is the Applique Wonder, or the Applique Fuse and Fix. These are great for doing applique. You fuse it to the back side of your applique fabric first, and then you cut out your applique. And then when you're ready to stitch, there is a paper backing, and you pull off the paper backing and it's tacky, so you can position your applique and then you can stitch. On the Applique Wonder, it's actually fusible on both sides. So once you got done with your applique, if you wanted this applique to be very stiff, you could fuse this. Again, you could press this and it would fuse the back side of the applique to the base fabric. I personally like to not do that extra pressing so that it's loose. And so if I get in here, so this one has actually been washed, and you can see there where the top fabric will wrinkle a little bit. which is actually what I like. If this was fused down, it would stay solid like this. But this will stay separate. You can see I can pull that apart. Also, the Quilter Select line has a similar product, but it's much, much thinner. That works really, really well if you're using a digital cutter. Heat and shrink. So this is an example, and let me see if I can get this up here to the camera so that you can kind of see. Can you see all the texture in there? So pretty much what happened here is I just stitched, when this was still flat, before it shrunk, I just stitched a grid going in both directions, and then you just steam it. So here's my top fabric. Let me see if I can get a corner here. So this was just a, I want to say this is just a batiste type fabric. So here's my top fabric, is just the pink. And then this is the heat and shrink material, which kind of feels like a nylon. Honestly, I don't know what it's made out of, but you stitch the two layers together and then you steam it really, really well. And the heat and shrink will shrink up, which is what causes all the texture on the front. It's just a really nice way to get texture into your projects. And it will stay put that way. Once it's been steamed, the wrinkles won't come out. They're all in there perfectly set. So that's the heat and shrink. The top cover or color keep topping, this is basically like a really thin piece of plastic. And this is the OESD, and it comes in multiple colors. So you can see here, it's just a very thin piece of plastic. And here's the reason for this. If you have, I'm trying to think. Okay, so here's for the black. Say you were stitching a white ghost on black fabric. And in that case, you would actually want to use the white. What you would do is you would put the top cover or color keep topping down on top of your black fabric, and then you would stitch out your white ghost. This is going to keep the fabric from showing through your embroidery. So if you were to stitch your white ghost directly onto black fabric, you may end up with kind of a grayish ghost. But if you use you basically want to match the color of your stitching with the color of your cover. So in that case, I would use the white. The Quilter Select Applique Web and also the OESD Soft Web, these are fusible webs. Applique Web comes in just the fusible web. Here, let me move that out of the way so that you can see. So this is the web, just the web. It also comes in a plus version, which has a paper backing. So it's really just up to you how you want to use it. Sometimes with the paper backing, it's a little bit easier to use. But what's really cool about this is it has give and it has stretch. So if you were fusing together two pieces that were stretchy, so this is a piece of polar fleece that has stretch and give to it, and then this is just a piece of double knit. But you can see I can stretch and I can pull that, and the fuse is staying put and it's not coming loose at all. And here's a piece of tricot, same thing. The OESD press cloth, this is one of my favorite things. You can get this in press cloth size, and it also comes in an ironing board size, I believe. It is just this piece of, I don't know what the content is, but it's kind of like a batting, but not quite. It's a little denser. So usually what I do is I'll just put this on my ironing board, and then say I have something that I need to press. Here's my embroidery. I'll put this face down to my press cloth, and then you can really press. Your embroidery will sink into the press cloth, but it will let you get, if you had any little wrinkles, you can easily press those out without crushing your embroidery, which that's the important part, not crushing your embroidery. And it works absolutely great. So that's the OESD press cloth. Then the last item I have on my list, and this is the perfect example. So this is just a piece of felt, and this is obviously a fairly dense design. And you can see when I hold this up, it's kind of barely moving. But I'm doing this on felt. So felt has no structural integrity whatsoever. To stitch this out and have a successful stitch out, and you can see here, you can see this is perfectly on my edge stitching. It's all perfectly aligned. If I would not have used the Fusible woven on my felt first, all of those edge stitchings would not have been aligned. The Fusible woven comes in both black and white, and it's a permanent fuse. So I would fuse this over the entire thing. So pretend I was going to make a pillow or a wall hanging or something out of this. So I've fused my Fusible woven over the entire back. And then when I stitched this, I just used a tearaway stabilizer so that I ended up tearing away all the stabilizer, but the Fusible woven has stayed in place. And this, the Fusible woven, is really what's giving the support to the felt, which of course has no support whatsoever by itself. Okay, so that's it for all of the specialty products.